How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Tear Talk. Guys, I want to revisit the Tepe murders again, kind of revisit Michael McKee. I've done a few videos on this already, but I've only provided my perspective. We want to talk about the affidavit again, just the stuff that have been unsealed. Now, if you guys are not familiar with this, I do recommend that you watch my playlist because it's going to kind of get you to where we're at in this moment. I don't want to keep on revisiting the same thing over and over again, because then I start to lose out on the viewers that have been keeping up with the playlist and they just want to get right into what the dialogue is. So that's what we're going to do today. My guest today is Denise Schoenwald. She's been on here multiple times. She's a mental health professional. I got 10 questions that come from you guys, and I'm going to go ahead and toss them her way to complement the discussion we've been having on this already. So again, if you haven't seen it, I did one video specifically explaining what was released in the affidavit, the unsealed information. Then I did another one right after that on a perspective to complement the other perspectives that were out there. And now there's this one with the mental health professional. 10 good questions for some discussions. I'm excited for this. And before I introduce Denise one more time, guys, if you get a chance, check out my other playlist, check out my other videos. The channel's kind of slow because YouTube doesn't promote me like it should, which is the truth. So I put up new cases, but they take a while. So just check out some of the other cases I put up. I just put a case up the other day that I think you guys would find interesting. It is the disappearance of Thomas Medlin, supposedly a Roblox meetup, but possible 15-year-old kid could have been meeting up with somebody from Roblox. We don't know yet. Or there may be some evidence that he may have self-deleted, committed suicide. Off a bridge, the Manhattan Bridge. But it's an interesting dialogue because we cross into so many things about gaming platforms and secret dialogues on platforms like Discord and Snapchat. It's very interesting. We dive deep, and that's maybe a future discussion for me and Denise. But I just want to recommend a few of my other episodes. Go check out what I have, guys. I got a lot of new cases that you may not be where I cover. And I'm telling you, I cover it in ways that's not being done, because not only do I look for the updates, but I really stay focused in areas where I feel we need to relax in a bit for a moment, because there's stuff here that could be addressed, that can actually help give the victim a legacy, because we can create change and honor the life that could have been taken away from us too soon. Denise, mind introducing yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. Denise Schoenwald, licensed mental health counselor, critical care nurse, family mediator. Happy to be here. You all know me pretty well, so I won't go on and on.
You are so straight to the point.
Yeah, that's me.
Could be that one new viewer that doesn't know you, but he'll figure you out by the end of the episode. So, Denise, before I go into the 10 questions, you know what? Hold on. I gotta found a news report real quick. Almost forgot to share it. They have him being booked. It's a new video that surfaced. So I want to show everybody this. It's funny when you look at this video. It's a quick video. You see him kind of going through the process of being booked. A lot of people would think that he's nonchalant, very compliant with staff, but like performative nonchalant. Like people are like, oh, he's so nonchalant, like he doesn't care. I don't think that. I think he's performing as if he's doesn't care. I see a little extra there. Would love your opinion on this. It's a very quick video. Let me show you this real quick. I had this.
New video tonight of Michael McKee being booked into the Franklin County Jail after being extradited from Illinois, where he was arrested. That doctor is accused of shooting to death his ex-wife and her husband last month here in Columbus in their Wineland Park home.
Steve Levine tonight is uncovering exactly what happened when McKee went from being a surgeon to a jail inmate.
This Franklin County Jail video shows 39-year-old Michael McKee being booked for the December 30th murders of his ex-wife, Monique Tepe, and her husband, Spencer.
This is a completely different setting than what he was used to there in Chicago.
Within minutes, McKee's clothes and boots seized, and he's patted down by corrections officers.
This is a different living arrangement, and so I think he's just dealing with it day to day.
ABC6 talking with retired Columbus Police Detective Jay Fulton, who worked 17 years in homicide.
I think he thinks he's the smartest person in any room he walks into.
How so?
Well, you can kind of tell he seemed bored by the extradition hearing in Illinois. He seemed uninterested in his video arraignment.
A newly unsealed police affidavit states McKee was captured on video outside the Tepes Wineland Park home for several hours, just 3 weeks before the homicides, while the couple was in Indianapolis attending the Big Ten National Championship game. Police say McKee caught on camera near the Tepes home around the time of the murders. His silver SUV tracked from Columbus to Rockford, Illinois, where he worked as a vascular surgeon. This affidavit revealing the vehicle had distinct features, including a stolen Ohio license plate. McKee's cell phone the day of the murders left at the hospital where he worked, unactive, for 17 hours.
He was committed to this course of conduct in an almost, maniacal type, overriding common sense way.
Does it look like he'd been planning this for a while?
I would say it's probably months in the planning.
The court affidavit says Monique told family and friends McKee had been abusive and made threats on her life during and after the marriage, telling Monique he could kill her at any time.
It screams motive. I mean, she felt disrespected. He felt abandoned. It was something he couldn't overcome.
McKee pled not guilty to all the charges when he was in court last week. He passed on requesting bond and remains locked up here at the Franklin County Jail. On your side, I'm Steve Levine, ABC 6 News.
So I'll be honest, I get what that officer was saying. I think, listen, I do think it was planned. I do. I think he was also aware that the outcome, he's got a good lawyer, but I also think all this stuff right here was a little bit performative, trying to pretend it's not getting to him. It could be a guy that's extremely narcissistic. I get it. And he's being extremely extra compliant. Like that would be an inmate automatically that watch out for him, guys. He's being a little bit looks like he's being a little over compliant.
Right.
But what's your thoughts?
Well, or he's so arrogant that he doesn't think that any of this is going to affect him, or he's not going to show that it's bothering him. I mean, when he's being patted down, he's almost yawning like he's bored to death.
I agree with you. I like the second part you said, because that's what got to me when he's being patted at. Yeah. I think he's making it known that it doesn't bother him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a bit performative.
I agree.
So before we start, there was the affidavit, guys. Again, please watch the other episode if you haven't, if you don't know what we're talking about here. But some stuff has been unsealed that we're going to explore today. That I think is going to definitely lead for a great discussion. But before we go in, I wanted to ask you anything right now that stands out about this case that you find fascinating, whether, it's just Michael McKee himself, a surgeon who, held on to this for 8 years, or even stuff about Monique. I mean, could she have known that he was this type of threat? And did she try to protect Spencer and not let him know? Or seems like she was an open book. I mean, the strength of Monique. I'm more confused really about who Monique is than who Spencer is.
Yeah. Or the fact that all of a sudden, 8 years of this became normal for her. Just dealing with him, dealing with his threats, dealing with him. There's something about the divorce. There's an error in the divorce filing, and just him being sort of a chronic pain in the neck that she just got used to dealing with. Never thought that it would get this far.
Yeah, I agree. I think, the routine, the urgency arose. And I think it's funny you mentioned that, because there was a clerical error, and they believe that clerical error would have sent notices out to both Michael McKee and Monique. And that was in July. So July of 2025. So did he start to now maybe change his behaviors and now, get fascinated with her? So, I mean, maybe he wasn't holding on to this for 8 years, but then there was something that triggered it, because, as I said, that clerical error is mentioned in the affidavit that it got released, everybody believes that was released. Both sides would have got notifications at some level.
But usually there's not really a clerical error. Like nobody goes looking for that. I have a feeling that he started trying to find something that he could bring her back into court over, because usually when you get divorced, you have the paperwork and you put it in a drawer and you don't really look at it, especially if there's no children.
So they said that the clerical error was related to a docket number, that it wasn't. No, I get what you're saying. I think the clerical error was something in here. Hold on. I had it. someone they asked, let me give you the specifics. Something with, so the error was legit. Something with the docket number. It happened. Court officials have said it was a simple paperwork mistake tied to the case's docket number, not a deliberate move to reopen the divorce. In June of 2025, a new hearing and September trial date were accidentally entered on the old divorce case, then later canceled once the clerk's office realized the docket number had been used in error.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
but what
Like,
they- what they was-
found that? Who would have
Huh?
found that? Who would have found that? Because usually once you get divorced and it gets filed and it goes in a drawer and, I mean, I don't know.
No, I think it went through. I don't know. I think the court put it in, and then they automatically, once it got in, automatically sent the notifications out.
Okay, but that's like how many years after the divorce? Because they were divorced like
Yeah, for 8 years. So I
8
guess
years.
I guess something with the number on the docket. Maybe what? Yeah. Either way,
I don't know.
That's all it mentions. But yeah, if you guys know in the audience, let us know. I heard it was like a clerical error, but and some people think that could have been the trigger that he got the notification, and then all of a sudden it triggered this. But again, that's a perspective.
Yeah, I have a feeling that this has been in his mind for a long time.
I agree with that. I do.
Mhm.
I try to provide all perspective, but I agree with what you just said.
Mhm.
I agree. I think this was something he was sitting on and just waiting for the moment to, maybe when she was the happiest or when she finally made that line to cut him off. I mentioned that too, which could have happened at that December 6th game where
Yeah.
I will probably go over, but real quick, if you watched the last video I did, even if we revisit, I want to get your opinion on this. So I think she was open with her dealings with Michael McKee. I think she was open to Spencer and her friends. I do think that, even though some people are saying she may not have been, everything that I've read so far shows you how open she was, from her brother-in-law, from Spencer's side knowing, so that's pretty far removed.
Yep.
To Spencer himself. And then Spencer, when she leaves the game on December 6th saying she was upset, I do believe that there's something of a routine there, because Spencer said she's just upset, as if maybe this happens all the time.
Right.
Now, I think, and I could be wrong, but this was a perspective that really wasn't being tossed out there, is I think they did have some level of communication. And I think what would happen is here, she would try to talk to him, maybe calm him down. But I think at this moment, she may have set the line because they're at a game, they're having fun, and he's probably playing some emotional guilt trip or doing some other shit. So she gets upset, and upset within context can mean whatever. I took upset as being annoyed. Other people took upset as fear. Well, it depends on where you're filtering it from. I took it as being annoyed.
I would too, because she's at a game and she's having a good time, and now all of a sudden he's bothering her again. And although she was very transparent about what was going on, this was 8 years, so probably everybody knew about it, but nobody knew that it would get to this point.
Yeah, and I just wonder. So she goes off. Let's say we'll probably have to revisit this later on, but I want the thoughts in our head. She goes off. I think she went to go. I mean, you left the game. You left having a good time. A game that you traveled hours to go see up in Indianapolis. Yeah. You leave the game because he got you upset. I'm thinking, upset is maybe he's playing some type of guilt trip or something like that, because technically you've been separated for 8 years. There should be nothing that he should be getting you upset about.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. Yep.
And at this moment, what could have been in that moment that she felt the need to leave that game from a relationship that ended 8 years ago? There's got to have been some communication with them throughout this time frame to a point where she was so invested that she would actually get upset and leave the game.
Yeah, especially because those tickets are not cheap.
Not
so
cheap
she's
at
traveled,
all.
She's gotten there, and all of a sudden he says something that she's so upset she has to leave.
Yeah, so when I see upset, I see an investment.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see upset as like what the fear, scared. No, that's not the context here. Something that made her want to leave a game, and I honestly think to continue a dialogue with him.
Right. So to somehow diffuse the situation or to get him satisfied enough that he's going to leave her alone for a while. That's what I think.
Yeah, and guys, I would like to think this. I know some people are saying, do you think that she could have known that he was at the house that day? I think she would have still called the police. I don't care what type of relationship, but she would have still, I don't see her not wanting to call the police. If he was to send a picture, because that's all she would need. I'm at your house next door, or I'm here. I think 100%, I don't care if I can calm you down or not. I'm going to call the police because I got my family. I got Spencer, my kid, Spencer. I don't see her as someone that's going to think she could still quell the beast if she knew that he's walking around her backyard that day. I don't see that. If he was to do that, I would honestly see she had to protect her kid. She's calling the police. She knows who this guy is.
Yep. Plus that night they went to sleep.
Yes.
So you don't do that. Like if anything, they would go to the in-laws' house or somebody's house if they were that felt that threatened. They would have done something and not put themselves in that situation personally.
Yeah, and to get that upset, I have to think maybe there was something still there in between them or something to the point where it gets her to leave. Because you have to look at it like even Denise said in context here. She's at a game in Indianapolis. She's with her friends. She's with probably expensive tickets, Spencer, and then I'm sure when he said she's upset, I'm sure he was very annoyed. And I'm sure in his mind, like you said, it's the routine. The urgency may be gone because this is a routine. So what was the other half of that routine? Does she now have to go quell the beast?
Yep. Does she now have to pacify him or get him, talk him through it?
Yes.
But I'm telling you, over those years, she probably had a lot of back and forth with him because he still kept engaging.
Right. So now, guys, we're only trying to figure this out, and we could be. There's no judgment here. We're approaching this whole dialogue in a state of curiosity. Now, granted, for her to up and leave like that, there had to be a level of investment from her.
Yep. There had to be some participation in this back and forth.
And Spencer could have been annoyed by that, but he knew he couldn't stop it. Because that was me. I paid all this ticket. You're supposed to be me. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And I would be going with her.
Yeah, and if I were in her shoes, I would just turn my phone off. If he was being such a pain in the neck and I'm at a game, and I with these kind of guys, you don't engage because the more you engage, trying to pacify them or not, you're caught up in the web.
Yeah, and then you got the emotional guilt, and I think he tries it until he gets cut off, and then when he finds out it's no longer going to work, and maybe it could have been, again, this is wild theory here. It could have been within the game where she finally says, you know what? Hey, listen, I'm going to tell you something right now. We're not doing this thing. Because it never says if she went back to the game. That's interesting. But that she left the game. So it's like, you know what? I'm having fun with my friend. You're doing this now. I'm done. But here's the other thing, too. I wonder if there was ever a discussion in the past. Because, again, if I was Spencer, and again, we only know what's in front of us. So this could have happened, may not have happened. But just to continue a dialogue is I would have either went back with her or maybe stood my ground and said, hey, hold on a second. We're not doing this. You're with me. You're here now. Whatever's going on, I don't care if you're upset. You shouldn't be upset. But I wonder if there was ever discussions in the past between her and Spencer where she's kind of set the mark with Spencer too, saying, listen, I'm going to have to deal with this. This isn't for you. And I know I know he's my ex. And it's not that I'm trying to be bad. I just have to try to make sure we're all good or whatever it is. So I don't want you to stop me from what I have to do. And I'm going to say it once. And then kind of set that mark that it's not that I'm planning on being back with him, but I'm going to have this dialogue with him. And I because I'm guaranteeing there may have been, I could be wrong, but behind the scenes where if I was Spencer, I wouldn't want her taking any phone calls. So if they had from him, so if they had continued dialogue, you could figure maybe Spencer at one moment could have said, hey, listen, this shit's got to stop. But now when I don't want to say the word allow, but bear with me here because allow is not in the context. Tolerate. Yeah, there you go. Because I didn't want to say allow in the context of ownership, but I'll take that. If I was Spencer, and bear with me on this. When I say tolerate, I mean it from this basis. I don't want anybody to think I'm putting one sex over the other or one gender over, but hear me out. Because she's her own person too, but this is a relationship that we're trying to preserve. I wouldn't have tolerated that.
I wouldn't have either. And he tolerated that for 8+ years. I'm
8
sure.
plus. I mean, either this could be two things. Either there was accepted boundaries of what that involvement, what he could do and not do, or he just wanted the game so much that I'm not going to deal with that. I'm going to have fun with the game. Bye-bye, Monique.
Mm-hmm.
It's just very weird.
Yep.
I still think there's parts to discover here. I think there may have been some dialogue. I think I like to say quell the beast. So
I'm sure there was dialogue.
Okay, so yes, I'm telling you, great minds think alike.
Mm-hmm.
So the first question I have is, and I'm going to note parts of the affidavit. So if you guys haven't gone back, I still am going to have some bullets here. So the affidavit describes friends and family saying Monique reported years of abuse, explicit death threats, and even strangulation, plus statements like, I can kill you anytime and you'll always be my wife. From a clinical perspective, what does that specific pattern tell you about his mindset and how high his risk really was?
Well, to me, there was no threat that was sort of crossing the line. I mean, if I were Monique, I would have a restraining order on him. I mean, whether she did or not, I don't know, but it just seemed like the rules for him weren't any rules. I mean, she moved on. They had 2 children, and he's still threatening her and being abusive to her. I mean, and again, I'm not putting any blame on her, but there was a lot of tolerance, it sounds like, that she put up with that kept him sort of reaching out. I mean, with a guy like that, you have to like cut it off, and then you cannot even talk to them at all, because any sort of participation gives them more power and control, which is ultimately what he got.
So, but you made a good point, though. So, why not the protection? So I have 2 perspectives here. Maybe the failure for the protection order was maybe he could have scared her. Okay, put it out there. Once you put it out there, I'm coming for you. You know, no paper is going to protect us. Maybe there could be that. Or maybe there was a connection she still wanted to preserve.
Or maybe she thought she could handle it.
Well, right. So it could be any one of those 3, let's just say, right?
Yep.
There's another video here, actually.
Yep.
I'm going to play it later, but they let me just hold on. Let me mute this for 1 second. They've been interviewing family members here. Let me see if I can get that one. I just saw it. They've been interviewing family members. It just popped up just now. I have the alerts on this. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Let me show you. This is a quick one. It's a 2-minute video or 3-minute video here. This is interesting. Interviewed a friend here. Let me see. All right, here we go. Let me share it real quick. And then I want to explore what you just said. Well, actually, before I share that, but can we break down all 3 real quick? So let's go with the mine first.
Okay.
The preserving the relationship. Is that plausible? Would that be beneficial in any way?
Well, if she's preserving the relationship, she's doing it enough to just keep him, quote, happy. I mean, yeah, let's hope that has a life with Spencer and she's happy with him and children. But for some reason, she feels the need to have some sort of conversation with him or text exchange or something, but not realizing how dangerous that is. Because a guy like that, you can't give them a little bit of attention and hope that they'll go away. They just want more.
Right. So I like to, so that in that case there, that's more of her trying to keep the beast at bay, you know, quell the beast. Right. Mm-hmm. And then there's the fact that he could have been a threat. So I wouldn't put anything on him because he already said that once I do that, paper's not going to stop me, let's say. So, you know, maybe, but then you said the relationship, what'd you say about the relationship that,
I said that I was guaranteed that there was a lot of back and forth, but getting back to the restraining order, the reason that should have been taken care of is because he needed to know that she was not going to tolerate anymore and that she was going to, if in this situation, I always encourage my female clients to get a restraining order because that lets them know that they're not going to get away with that, whether or not they obviously if they want to do something, they don't care about the restraining order, but it sort of makes a statement. And I think it's something that should be done.
So let me ask you a question when it comes to the people that you've counseled. Do they know that the person's already a threat and they still have to be convinced to do the restraining order? Or do you have to first convince them that the person is a threat?
The threat becomes some sort of normalcy. Like, oh, well, that's what he does. And that's what he does when he's mad. And I go, okay, but there's a certain line that's being crossed and you should get a restraining order. Usually they go, Rarely do they, but I think it's a very important thing to do so that the other person knows that, okay, now legally, this is on record that you're a problem.
All right, so good. So then you actually answered our question then. I appreciate that, because maybe that's what it was. Maybe, she could have been telling her friends, but in some way she also could have minimized it too to herself, because this is what he does. It's routine. Yeah,
and she's used to it. I mean, this is just their dynamic. And
then I'm 5 hours away from him.
Right. And this is how he does, and this is how he threatens, but he's 5 hours away and he's busy. But I mean, he said a lot of things that would make me go right down to the courthouse and get a restraining order. And he would have to go to court for that. And that would be something he wouldn't want that on his record, being a doctor and a surgeon and all that. But
yeah, and then he had the restrainers. Would he be able to have guns? I don't think, is that a concern when you have restraining orders? Can you have guns?
Yeah, well, and it would say, when you get your medical license renewed, have you had any sort of charges against you, or have you had any problems with the law? And you have to answer that one truthfully. So that would be a problem.
That's a great point, because knowing how much of a threat he could have been, why not? I mean, why not get that restraining order? Why not seal? Because at least, worst comes to worst, he's on your property. He could just be arrested for calling you.
Yeah, or have difficulty getting his license renewed because he's being a pain in the neck to her. And if I were Spencer, I would have insisted on that.
So now the funny thing is, because I could picture, my mind goes, I could picture maybe people asking this was, she could have cut off the community if he was such a threat. There could have been many reasons to cut off,
right?
And then solidify it long ago. So either there wasn't this ongoing dialogue for 8 years and could have just happened off a trigger, which we could have been one thing, or could have been anything, but something could have triggered them. Or if they were having these back and forths, which they did say in the affidavit, there was some interactions after the marriage, she could have easily just cut it off, unless for some reason she felt the need to keep the dialogue engaged. Was that for safety? Was that for she felt she owed him something?
Don't know.
Emotional guilt?
And whatever reason it was, I mean, it was a very dangerous choice for her.
Right.
I mean, this guy, but what I would have done is I would have just made sure that was on record, because he could have a restraining order and a no contact order. So then the first text message that comes through, you go down to the police and you say, listen, this is what I have and this is what's happening. And I mean, that could have been a real problem for him. But she didn't do that.
I wonder if there's a chance where, so she leaves him about 7 months into the marriage, divorces 2 years later. I wonder if, because Monique seemed to be a very loving person, caring person, I wonder if he could have played into that with her and maybe kept her connected by making her feel guilty for ruining his life.
Yep, absolutely. Because people like that, they look for little loopholes to get in and get what they want. And you have the really nice person and the pleaser, that's prime target for them, that kind of person.
And they explain her as loving and
she was too nice to him, and he exploited that.
You just put the title of an article right there. Okay, let me show this.
Unfortunately, I've seen it many times.
Yeah, so sorry, you got my interest again. Sorry, guys, I want to show you this video, but you got my interest again. So does the guilt, if they play that route, do they start minimizing the danger and start taking on a level of responsibility for what the separation, when it happened, when really it's you forced me to make this decision, but now through this emotional guilt, like how could I feel guilty if you scared the shit out of me. You threatened me. You tried to kill me.
Right.
But then a month later, you got me feeling guilty for leaving you when I
Yes.
left because I was afraid.
Right. But you got to remember, the guilt is manipulation. And if you're not really confident and assertive, you fall into that trap. And then you start playing the game. You go, oh, you know, whatever you say to try to pacify them. And what you don't realize is you're getting yourself in deeper and deeper until you're going to get yourself into the point of no return. These kind of personality disorders are not to be trusted. I mean,
because she left him physically. She left technically to some extent. She left him physically, sort of.
right,
You know?
but she didn't leave him emotionally, or
Right. And that was the one thing I think he was trying, could have been her weakness, maybe, if there was a continued dialogue into that 8 years.
yeah, there had to be, because for all of a sudden for that to escalate, for her to leave this game, to
Yeah,
be
the
so
game.
upset, to leave, and then all of a sudden, you know, and he does a lot to kill her. You know, he travels, he switches his license plate, and leaves his cell phone at the hospital. I mean, he did a lot of things to, you know, prepare this, and you know, this was very masterful. And guys like that are very precisioned.
So so I'm thinking about what you're saying, right? And I love it. So now I want to show you this video, but let me add one more thing. So I'm
Okay.
sitting there and I'm because you're spot on. I just want to let me ask you a question here. So she's firm in her way, and she knows the separation is for her own survival, right? So somehow he's still calling her, somehow she's still picking up. Maybe what could have made her leave the game is he could have threatened to kill himself. We're always looking at the threat towards her or Spencer. But what about her response is really because he threatened to hurt himself, and that's when she gets upset, but now she has to go.
Yep. Well, regardless of what it was some manipulative tactic. And that's what they do. And I will tell you, I have a friend therapist that only works with narcissistic personality disorder. And he says to people that come to him that are married or have partners, he says, the first thing that you do is you go no contact. He said, and not over like the dogs or the children or anything. There's no contact, because the more that you give them energy, the more that they just, it's like putting, you know, gasoline on a fire. It gets worse and worse and worse. And, you know, she became immune to his threats. I mean, if somebody said to me, you know, I could kill you anytime I want to, I would take that seriously.
I'm reading, someone sent me, people keep saying there was a restraining order, therefore he was abusive, but they had an uncontested quick. Yeah, no one's saying there's a restraining order. Sometimes people run with just.
Well, but yeah, we don't know that there was. What I was saying is there should have been. That would have been.
Yeah, I agree, but there's nothing there. I mean, that would have been released in the affidavit. They released everything else.
Well, and if there were, he would have a problem having his license, because you can't have an active license if you've had some sort of problems with the law.
And I think having a weapon is an issue too, ain't it?
Well, I know on my license, there's nothing about like owning a weapon, but there is something of, have you had any, you know, any problems with the law, any misconduct, anything against your license, anything against you person. I mean, you have to, you know, that's something that we have to answer.
Yeah. So if he had a restraining order against him, could he own a gun?
Probably not. Probably not.
Stupid.
At least usually in our state, probably not.
In many situations, no. Being under so I don't think there was one.
I don't either.
Qualifying domestic violence restraining order means you legally cannot have a gun, but there are a few nuances. Under federal law, a person who is subject to a final domestic violence protection order generally cannot possess, receive, or purchase a firearm or ammunition while the order is in effect. The Supreme Court recently upheld this law as constitutional, confirming that someone a court finds to be a credible threat can be temporarily disarmed. To count as qualifying order under federal law, let's see if this will qualify, be issued after the person had notice and a chance to be heard, not just as an ex parte temporary order. Restrain the person from harassing, stalking, or threatening an intimate partner or the child, or from using physical force. So if he was doing it, especially stalking, that could evolve into something extremely violent. And include a finding that they're a credible threat or explicitly prohibit use or threaten use of physical force. Ohio does not automatically strip gun rights in every protection order, but judges can and often do write firearm bans directly into. So if he had qualifying domestic violence restraining order against him, he should not have been allowed. So I if you go by that, and this may not be 100%, guys, but it's enough for a discussion here. There may not have been anything because he still had weapons that they didn't say were not illegal in his home. But again, nothing's 100%. This is just our initial interpretation of it.
Well, I will tell you, in Florida, I have a case now where there's a restraining order against the husband, ex-husband, and he also had to give up all firearms.
Yeah. You see it with law enforcement personnel too. The last thing you want is that restraining order because it affect the person's job.
Yeah, that's it. And it would affect my job. And as a physician, it would affect his job.
Yeah. All right. So I want to show, this is coming from her friends. I thought it was an interesting video to share.
Get my glasses back on so I can see it.
More about the evidence Columbus police say they have against Michael McKee in the shooting deaths of his ex-wife, Monique Tepe, and her husband, Spencer.
10 TV's Lacey Crisp explains newly unsealed court affidavits detail allegations against McKee of abusing Monique.
This affidavit details a history of alleged physical and sexual abuse. Monique Tepe allegedly told friends that she feared Michael McKee.
Like her aura was just like so bright, so like loving, so inclusive.
Friends describe Monique Tepe as a ray of sunshine, someone who was always thinking of others. Ariana Turner's kids attend the same preschool as Spencer and Monique's two children. They got to be good friends as they navigated pregnancies together.
She was just such a positive person, and she was just like, anytime I've seen her, she always had something positive to say.
Turner tells me she was both brokenhearted and shocked to hear her friend had been killed. According to recently released court affidavits, friends and family members told Columbus police that Monique said her ex-husband, Michael McKee, had been abusive and had made several threats on her life during and after their marriage. Court records show others told detectives that McKee was physically and sexually abusive and that McKee allegedly told Monique he could kill her at any time.
You got doctors, you have nurses, you have all these different type of people out here that can be an abuser. There is no look to be an abuser. You can be sitting next to an abuser and you don't even know it.
Callie Smith is a domestic violence survivor and advocate and works with Columbus Public Health. She explains you never know who may be a domestic violence perpetrator or survivor. Like in Monique's case, she says it's common for domestic violence survivors not to file police reports.
A lot of people don't feel like they can get the help that they need. A lot of people feel like I'm not the right color to get the help that I need. A lot of people feel like nobody will believe me. Nobody's going to listen to me.
Smith urges anyone in a domestic violence situation to get help. There is help available. Turner says she's going to remember her friend for her beautiful soul.
I'm always going to remember her, just the positive impact. And I know everybody wants to give all this light on how she left, but let's give her flowers for how she was when she was here. Both of them, they were amazing people. Let's focus on that.
McKee has pleaded not guilty. He's being held in a Franklin County jail.
So look at this real quick. Why someone would not put a, let's say, protection order. So one is, the abuse wasn't documented in court at the time, so their 2017 divorce paperwork shows no domestic violence allegations, no restraining order request, just incompatibility, even though friends say she privately reported serious abuse and threats. That's exactly the pattern where someone is trying to get out quietly without formally putting the danger on the record. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I just think she still should have done it. Put a restraining order on him, but I mean,
No, I agree with you. I 100%. I was just trying, because it doesn't make sense for her not to, it doesn't make sense for her not to do it. Sorry, that's on me.
Yes, unless she didn't want to do it because she didn't want to destroy his livelihood and she didn't want him to even be more, more of a threat than he already was.
Man, as I was looking this up, that was so let me get to that. You got it. That was yours. Guys, I did not show her that ahead of time. I'm going to read what I had. I didn't think of that. Remember I was saying earlier, kind of like this, but maybe she didn't want to, what's that phrase? Maybe she didn't want to poke the bear.
Yep. Upset the apple cart, whatever.
So I thought of that. So it says fear to provoke and will. Witnesses say he told her he could kill her at any time, that he would always be her husband, and that he would buy the house next to hers, which signals a control and retaliatory mindset. Many survivors in that position worry a protection order will poke the bear and escalate things, especially if he already ignores boundaries. Then belief that, and we talked about this, belief that time and distance might keep her safer. The reporting describes a short marriage, a fast divorce through a private judge, a move, and then her building a new life and family with Spencer without any new court filings against McKee. That lines up with strategy of escape and starting over rather than continuing to engage with him through ongoing legal battles. Makes sense if she was cut off from him. But they have practical structural barriers, like getting an order means time off work. That's irrelevant. Shame, minimization, and hope. Survivors can feel embarrassed, blame themselves, or believe it's not that bad, or he's finally changing, especially if there's our calm periods between explosions. But this is the one that I couldn't get, and you just said it. Not wanting to criminalize him. Some survivors simply do not want their partner arrested, deported, or made a criminal, even while they're terrified of his behavior. Even though it says here add something about being a parent, but she could have ruined his career.
Yep. But she underestimated his manipulation and power. She was nice to him.
Have you ever had anybody not want to do it because they were concerned about what could happen to their livelihood?
Yep.
She's not dependent on him.
She's not, but no, because he's, I don't know, whatever he does for a job. And I'll tell you, I talked about this in my book, Elephants Don't Marry Giraffes. Some of the most abusive cases that I've heard of this have been people that are doctors, dentists. I mean, and what the lady said about domestic violence, you don't think it happens to people that should know better or make a lot of money, but those have been some of the worst cases that I've heard. And then you say, you really should get a restraining order. And they go, no, he's also a physician and I don't want to jeopardize his career. And I'm thinking, okay, but giving him all this leeway it's not going to help you.
If you had to make a guess on all these things, I would lean, I love what you're saying, because I can actually see that. I'm leaning to poke the bear. I just feel, that plays out a little bit, but that's not far either. He's a surgeon.
Yep. But I'm telling you though, with when certain people cross lines, you really need to come down hard. And it's been a couple cases that I've had where, whether they're threatening me or I've been in situations where they're threatening, I was like, okay, then this needs to go the legal route. Like, this is not something you want to play around with.
Imagine getting to the point where even after all this, she still cared about him more than she may have even cared about herself at that point for her own protection.
Well, she certainly she acclimated to a lot of his, antics.
However, yeah, and I'm curious to see if that's still going to be discovered. Got to be forensic evidence on the digital side.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of it.
So we now know that on December 6th, Monique left the Big Ten championship game. We may have touched on this. Upset about something involving her ex, and that same night, the affidavit says McKee was on the curtilage, which is not inside the house, guys. It's in or around the house, attached garage. It's not directly in the house, but on property of her home in Columbus. Psychologically, how do you understand that moment? Her emotional distress in Indianapolis versus her physical presence on her property. I don't think she knew.
I don't either, because certainly she wouldn't put the kids to bed and go to sleep. I wouldn't.
No way.
No.
And I don't know if her kids were with her. Right. So her kids could have been still at the home. We don't know. It doesn't say where her kids were. Hey, guys in the audience, if you know, when he was walking the property on December 6th, where were her kids? Did her kids go to the game in Indianapolis? Wait, what year was that? Oh, that's this year, last year, 2025. Yeah. Are you taking the young kids to that game? Probably not. So where were they? At home? Or were they by relatives' house? I just don't think she knew he was on the property that day.
No, I don't think so either. Because that would, for anybody, that would scare me to death.
And you would, no matter what you're doing, you got to call that in.
Oh yeah.
That's a line that's crossed.
Yeah. Yeah. She had, I have a feeling she did not know that.
Yeah. Cause a lot of people thinking that she did and she did and didn't report it. That's a concern. But yeah, I agree. I think that's something that she would report for many reasons. And now you have to protect your family.
Yep.
This
Plus, we
goes
know that
beyond-
when he killed her, the kids were there. I mean, they were
Yeah,
unharmed.
inside the house.
So you wouldn't have your kids there.
Yeah, it's crazy because what's going on through these other channels is they really are trying to do this theory that, and these are criminologists, but a lot of them that are these criminologists, I respect what they do. Don't get me wrong; these are just the ones I'm watching on social media. They could be self-proclaimed for all I know, but they say they have these degrees. They sensationalize it and they go for just something just to be different or more extreme when it's like, well, wait a second, maybe, but that's really out there.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, before we go in, I mean, I'm not saying, anything could be probable, but you didn't even make an effort to exhaust the obvious.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, this case, although it seems, unbelievable, I've seen this case many, many times.
Even the time duration? Really? The time duration?
I've seen this dynamic where there's years of, stalking but a lot of times when the partner just cuts it off or puts files a restraining order, the partner will go away and then find somebody else quickly, like really quickly, because all of a sudden they realize that like this isn't going to continue, and then they go find, another victim.
Just maybe a little off topic, but does the gender matter? Would masculine look more of ownership and control? Would the female gender be a bit different in the obsessive stalking?
The females usually are not quite as violent. Usually it's a lot of like the texting back and forth that I've seen. So I'm just speaking on my behalf. The guys can be a little bit more sexually aggressive, with, the raping and physical and so forth.
Signs of control.
Yes. And more aggressive signs of control.
Would the female be more of attention?
Yes. And a lot of pot stirring, and particularly if the kids are involved, getting the kids involved and the family involved. And so a lot of like conniving, I guess, would be the best word. But the guys that I see are more physically aggressive, abusive, and so forth, even to the point where they'll show up at their work. And I mean, that's where I say, you need to get a restraining order and you need to have no contact. But they keep this texting game like they can, like the partner feels like they can handle it, and they don't realize that they're playing a very dangerous game.
Right. And we see Michael McKee as narcissistic, which makes sense because he treats it like an object, like property.
Yeah.
I think
narcissistic. He even goes into the sociopathy or the antisocial, because he does things he didn't even look like when he was getting patted down that or in court that he really could care less.
I think I agree with that. I think he added a little extra to it, but I agree with what you're saying. I think he wants the world to know that this ain't getting to him. So I think maybe it's not, but he's adding a little flavor. And I was going to say the narcissism allows for possession. It's an object, whatever it is. But would you, this could be for control, I guess, as we mentioned. Would you see power? Would you see like a woman? Now, this is weird, but I hate it because I don't want to generalize, but let's just put a caveat. Not everything will fit in this category, but let me get this point out. So you got narcissism for control, power, obsession, whatever it is, objectifying, however. Mm-hmm. But could you have that type of stalking on the extreme opposite end of narcissism, some level of insecurity, and would that be found like maybe on a female stalker?
Well, insecurity sort of is the underpinning of narcissism.
Remember you said that before.
Yeah. And so now how do people act on that insecurity? Do they overcompensate and then they're very pompous and arrogant and so forth? What I've seen with women who are narcissistic, they're more a little bit of self-centered and attention seeking and pot stirring, and they're a little bit, I guess, more polished. The guys that I have seen, and again, this is sort of what I do. So I'm talking about, I've seen thousands and thousands of cases like this. So I see a lot of patterns, and I also see how they fit together. A narcissist will pick somebody that puts up with their narcissism. Mm-hmm. And, Monique in this case, she she played along in his game, and she never sort of put the foot down. She seemed like a really nice person and a really sweet person. And that probably did not help her in the end.
So I like what you said about the intent, like about so the narcissism, the insecurity could be for the want for attention to some level, but then the narcissism would be not understanding why you're not giving me that attention.
Well, the narcissists, again, they look for a lot of they call conditional energy. So they need money. They need something out in the environment. They need other people to love them and think that they're wonderful and so forth. And so how is he trying to get power? With him, he was being very manipulative.
Yeah.
And so that's how he was getting it. And I imagine he got a lot of attention being a doctor, and that's sort of.
So I'm wondering if I'm wondering if up close, when she was closer to him, the threats were more aggressive, kind of in your face. But then when she gets some distance and he loses some sense of control, could the manipulation then shift to guilt or the game? Because now I can't control you immediately in front of me. So now I'm going to try to control your head.
Exactly. Because apparently when they were married, he was physically abusive. He was sexually abusive. Okay. So now she's got distance and she's remarried. She has kids. So now he's got to play the mind game.
So it's not that far-fetched to say that we said before, there could be a chance that what could have motivated her to stay connected, if you take her in the context that we've been told who she was, is he could have played at some level, I'm going to hurt myself or kill myself if you don't talk to me. Yeah,
he exploited her sweet spirit and her the way that her friend described her. He exploited that.
Yeah, guys, these are just perspectives, kind of all over. But when you're trying to figure out somebody, these are the discussions that you have, because it's never, you're dealing with human behavior. It's never a straight road. It's somehow all these things working together at once.
It's true. But what I see, because this is sort of what I do, is I see patterns. I see how it all fits together. It's like a puzzle that you would think, how does this work? And if you really sort of understand the pattern, you understand how everybody has participated. Even Spencer. I mean, he's the new husband, and you might say, well, he didn't participate at all. He did something, because that relationship at some level kept going.
Now, but you made a very good point, and I got to mention something now. This is why Monique's a little bit confusing for me, because Michael McKee's pattern could be reactionary.
Yep. And she was a pleaser, and she was a sweet spirit, and maybe
we don't know enough about her interactions. We just know he's obsessed. But was there something, and guys, this is not saying to you or not, just for the dialogue, was there something that kept her connected to him, or him to her?
Well, what kept them connected was he manipulated her and she participated on some level, because it's the only thing that makes sense.
I agree with you on that. Hey, guys, an audience that's watching this, out of curiosity, and guys, this is only a discovery. That's not for judgment, but just to kind of figure out so we can learn from this moving forward. Is there a chance that, I'm not minimizing, but is there a chance that somewhere along the line that participation could have led to his obsession? That makes sense?
Yeah, well, again, engaging on some level, so we'll use that word, certainly fueled it.
And a hope, maybe, that subjectively filtered as a hope?
Well, I think her hope was that he would be satisfied and go away.
His hope.
Yeah, but her hope maybe is that she could pacify him and he would go away and maybe move on with his life. He just became more obsessive and more, it's got more premeditated to end her life, because she would not go back to him.
So I love what you just said. Could her hope to pacify, try to, quell the beast, turn into his hope of an open window?
Well, certainly she kept engaging. And again, with a narcissist, you cannot engage. You just can't. It's like a kid having a temper tantrum and you only give him a half a candy bar. That's not going to make him better and stop doing that. That just gives them more and more incentive to dig in. And these narcissist, antisocial personalities, you cannot give them a little bit of attention because they know how, they're masterful at manipulating. I mean, I've seen it to the point where I'm like, oh my goodness. I mean, I watch, the husbands or the wife, I watch them manipulate each other, and to the point where the other person doesn't even realize that it's happening.
Right. So again, just feeding off what you're saying. So check this out. So we get in what we read that she's very open about the concerns about him and how she felt, what he said to her, stuff like that. So she was open to that. But we still feel there could have been some level of engagement where she may not have been open to her friends about, because her friends would have said, what are you doing?
All right. Somebody should have cut him
off. So is there a chance that she could have been not as open about her return engagement if there was one?
Or she minimized it. I mean, because if you had a therapist or a friend or family member, no one would say, I think this is a good idea that you keep texting. I mean,
because you're telling us how dangerous he is, and yet you're still fucking communicating with him.
Exactly. And you're still texting him, or you're still answering his calls, or whatever you're doing. She's doing something that's keeping the game going, or the interaction going.
And guys, it's no judgment here, just trying to figure this out.
Judgment.
So, I just want, hopefully you guys see the dialogue. It's just us kind of figuring this out. Okay, so the affidavit doesn't describe just a one-off visit. It outlines repeated entries onto or around the Tepes property in the weeks before the murders. How do you, as a mental health professional, distinguish ordinary stalking from the kind of ordinary stalking? From the kind of yeah, I'm going to skip that question because it goes. I don't know where that ordinary stalking from the kind of persistent surveillance that signals a serious potentially. I think it evolves into. There's no ordinary stalking is obsession to some level. So I'm going to disregard that question, guys. I apologize. And whoever sent that, I apologize. But you can see what I'm saying. I'm not going to minimize one side of stalking versus the other. It's to me, stalking. Stalking is the red flag.
Yes.
Investigators point to Ohio and Arizona plates tied to his past and present addresses, along with a travel trail that shows that vehicle going into Columbus before the murders and leaving afterwards. What does that kind of plate swapping and travel pattern suggest about premeditation and psychological organization compared to a crime of passion?
Yeah. And that one guy that you showed the clip on before had said that he imagined that this was thought about or premeditated for months. I mean, he covered every detail. So to me, I mean, that this is not something that he just did it on a whim. I think this was calculated, and they said that when he went in, there was no sign of forced entry. So somehow he figured out how to get in there without.
I still want to know how he got in.
I know. It's like whether he noted, like he was stalking to the point where he saw where you could put a code in and get the door, or
could he have been let in?
Yeah, right. There was some way that he figured out how to get in. And, you would think at nighttime they had the doors locked. So somehow he figured out, I mean, yeah.
Once you find out how he got in, that's going to say a lot.
Yeah. Or knew how to do the keypad, on the garage or.
I mean, he could have been, he could have, watched. I mean, he's been there multiple times. Who knows what he was. I mean, he was there for hours. He could have been setting up something.
Yeah.
This kind of is the same question. Just one of the most talked about details in the affidavit is the long period where the phone is inactive while the car associated with him is moving between Illinois and Ohio. So this is the day of the murder. What does that? The phone was inactive for 17 hours. So it looked like he didn't take the phone with him. What does that kind of tech planning tell you about his state of mind, his level of calculation? We just answered that.
That also tells me that he didn't want to be disturbed, because any physician cannot go 17 hours without getting calls from the hospital, calls from the office, calls. And so, he leaves his phone somewhere and then nobody can reach him.
Yeah. And guys, by the way, that's support evidence. That would not be standalone evidence, because people could go for a drive, realize I forgot my phone, even though we know that's highly unlikely nowadays. It could be argued that. So this would be evidence that would be supported in context, but would not be able to stand alone. The affidavit and public documents emphasize that there was no forced entry, that both adults were killed inside the home, and that the children were found alive inside. From a psychological standpoint, what might it mean to target the adults so precisely but leave the kids unharmed in the house?
Well, he had no problem with, he has no vendetta against the kids. I mean,
what about saying that the ultimate punishment was leaving those kids without the parents? That would be the ultimate punishment for her too. Well,
you know, I mean, he's a killer, so it's hard to know like how he made sense out of all of it. But you know, I mean, there was no reason to kill the kids. I mean, you know, so and a lot of times they won't kill the pets either. You know, they'll just go after the people that, you know, that they've got the biggest vendetta against, and everybody else is fine.
You know, it's funny. I'm reading Most Evil, Michael Stone, and, you know, learning the process. I want to do this video, but it's a lot of work, but I got to get I got to make it a little bit worthwhile. So I got to let the get to a point where I'm comfortable that the videos I release get the views it needs, because a lot of work goes behind it. But one of the things it mentioned is that, you know, people do commit bad acts, but doesn't mean they're bad people, but they could commit a bad act. And you know, especially as someone like a mental health professional, I'm sure you have to separate the act from who that person is, and then make a determination if it's the person that really the act is who that person is, or the act is just a moment in time.
Right, like a reaction.
Like a reaction. So it's funny how you said he was a killer.
Yeah.
Now, yes, he killed these two people, so by definition, the act could make him one. Or do we think it's conditional? Do we think his narcissism led to his obsession and control? So do you think there was maybe a threshold and he could have went either way?
Well, there was a progression. We definitely know there's a progression, because there's a lot of narcissists that don't go kill people.
Right.
Right. So it's almost like a continuum or a scale. So you have some that are people that are narcissistic, but they're basically benign. They're not abusive. And then as they go further and further down the scale and they become more and more aggressive, or they act out even more. And this is what I talk about in Elephants Don't Marry Giraffes. And then they get to the point where they will kill, or they will rape, or, you know, they do things that are very violent. And that tells me that they're going into more of the antisocial personality. This is not just plain narcissism. This is narcissism. Now it's going into a different personality disorder.
So do you think after this act, I know hopefully he gets whatever he can get, the highest level of justice, either death penalty or life, but do you think he's someone that would kill again?
Yeah, I think he could easily get into a different relationship and do the same sort of pattern.
So how do you go from this? So that's a great question here. So let's say me and you are involved, right? And I'm obsessed with you, which means that in my mind, right, it's only you. Everything else is secondary. Yeah. Everything else will have to. How can two people ever occupy, in my mind, that level of obsession unless I wipe one out? I mean, how can I occupy that level of obsession for more than one person unless it's really about the control of that individual, or am I leaning on something?
That's it. And that's exactly it. It's more about the power and control. So a lot of times when all of a sudden they can't have that anymore, because the person, I don't know, files a restraining order or whatever, they typically, a lot of times that I've seen, is then they marry somebody else, and they usually do it so quickly. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how do you do that so quickly? But they get married, or they're seeing somebody else and they get married, or whatever they're doing. And then all of a sudden the fixation is on that person. I actually have a case like that now. So
there's no love in this.
It's more about power and control. It's more about obsessing and needing all the attention. And once they don't get it, then, you know, typically they'll go to somebody else, or they just fixate on that person and they sort of punish them for not giving them all the attention that they need.
So would Michael McKee, if we were to talk to him and we had this dialogue, would he somehow think this is all love, or would he somehow know that this was about power and control?
Now I'm going to go out on a limb. I would predict, or I would imagine, that if someone like me went in and interviewed him, I think he'd be an arrogant asshole, to be perfectly honest. I think he'd be smug. I think he'd be condescending. And I think he'd give a lot of smart answers. And I think it would be like a 20-minute interview. And I'd be like, okay.
Yeah, interesting, because I was wondering how, after he did this, and let's say we finally get the admission, let's just say in the perfect world, he admitted, and we try to get the why, and he was so open to give us in this perfect world, which I doubt, but let's just play in my fantasy here. Would he say he did this out of love, or would he say he did this because I needed control?
I don't think he would admit to doing anything. I think he would be, I think he'd be arrogant. I think he'd be smug, or he would blame it on her. For whatever reason. I don't think he would take responsibility. I would be shocked if he took responsibility, personally.
Right. I was just wondering. I was just saying, in the perfect world, how would he try if we had the admission and we start to try to get his reasoning behind? Because, later on down the line, you try to figure out why people did what they did, not to minimize what they did, but to get an understanding into that mindset. Would he justify this as an act of love, or would he justify this as retaliation? You want to leave me? I'll show you where that goes. Yeah. How would he see it? Or in his mind, is this how he would define love?
I don't think he would even let you get in to like why he did what he did. And so if he weren't arrogant, so I described a very clinical language with all my cursing and swearing, that's how he would act. But the other part of it, what I would also imagine that he could do is be very charming. So that would probably be how it would start. And then I think when we got into motive and got into the details, I think he would get very smug and arrogant, because I don't think he would like being challenged.
I agree. I agree with that. You see it a lot with the people that have, especially with serial killers. People that actually can see their victims as objects. You got to have a higher level of, was it ego or
Exactly. And you can't tap into their emotions and get them to feel. Do they
even have emotions?
Right. Emotion, or regret or understanding. They just get really smug and usually deflect it.
All right. So this next question we kind of touched on, but I'll read it. It was about the clerical error that briefly put the long-closed Tepe McKee divorce case back on the docket in 2025 with the phantom hearing set and then canceled. How could a ghost court date like that land emotionally for someone like Monique, and separately for someone with an ownership mindset like McKee? Could it realistically act as a trigger? We touched on that at the very beginning. Anything you want to revisit?
No, but that would be something I would want to understand a little bit more, because I've never heard of that. I'm not saying it didn't happen, because obviously it happened, but the fact that they'd have to go back to court and years later, it's just not that it didn't happen, but something I've never seen before. And I can't imagine in a case like this that would be something that would have to be revisited. The error might need to be corrected, but I can't imagine that it would sort of open up a can of worms.
So what happened was, from what I remember reading in the affidavit, is that there was a clerical error. They had somebody on one of the channels I was watching, where did I read it, that worked for the courts and said it could happen, something with the numbers. But once it gets put in there, the notifications automatically go out. Okay. But then someone realized that, hey, this is a mistake. This was done a couple of years ago. So something with the numbers, or a letter, whatever it is. And then it gets taken off. But people had asked, well, would they still have been notified? And this would have been in July of 2025. And they said, yes, they would have been notified if it was put on put on to be seen.
But I imagine that was something like, we've made an error, clerical error, and this is going to be corrected, and you'll get right. So I think they think that the trigger was the fact that
it brought the relationship back in light again for him when he got. So let's say let's say they didn't have this continued timeline like we just mentioned, and it was quiet. Again, these are just for people trying to justify. Is it 8 years or was there something recently? Because it could be either one. So they said that maybe there was something like this that could have just put it back at in the perfect moment. Because at this point, he was going through his own concerns with possible malpractice. So it was like just could have been
maybe it provided an opportunity for them to have some sort of exchange. I mean, we could say that.
Maybe or the chance for him to engage with her again. Yep. Hey, what is this? What did you put? That's unique. It could have gave him an excuse to call her if they weren't having those discussions beforehand.
Yeah. I think they were. I think that was just another opportunity.
I got to agree with you.
Yeah.
I got to agree with you on that.
I'll tell you.
3 more questions. Looking at the affidavit as a whole, historic abuse, explicit threats, stalking on the property, the plate and travel trail, the phone gap, the children in the home, what does that overall picture tell you clinically about his fixation on Monique and his need to reestablish control? We kind of
we've sort of answered that. I mean, he was just completely obsessed.
So 2 more questions then. In this case, where do you see the biggest gap between how safe Monique and Spencer likely felt in their new life and the actual level of danger that described in the affidavit? How common is that kind of disconnect in high-risk domestic violence situations?
Well, it's true, and a lot of times this becomes normal. So again, it's abusive. And this is where it's helpful when they come to people like this, come to a therapist, because they'll talk about it like this is something in everyday life, and I'll be like, no, this is something that you really need to be concerned about. But it gets to the point, especially when it goes on years and years, that this becomes part of our day-to-day life. It's just something that we deal with, and we don't realize the magnitude of these words and threats and stalking and so forth.
Yeah, and I think we discussed this before in another video. I think he went in there, said his piece, and killed them immediately. He didn't allow for anything to shift what he was planning on doing. The plan was right. He drove 5 hours, planned it. I think he either shot them immediately or said a few things and shot them, but I don't think some people think prolonged. I'm not going to dig into all that. I think this was immediate, and then he got the fuck out.
I agree.
Last question here is, if a listener hears echoes on their, this is brings it back to the listener. If a listener hears echoes of their own situation in these details, an ex who talks like they still own them, shows up around their home and can't seem to let go, what should they do right now that might be different from what Monique and her family were realistically able to do at the time? That's a good question.
Well, one, I would encourage anybody who's not sure to make an appointment with a therapist and really sort of hash this out. This is somebody that'll give you an objective opinion. I would encourage you to pick a therapist that specializes in relationships or couples. I certainly do a lot of couples counseling, but this is something where you really need to get some advice, but then you have to be willing to take the steps. It's not just, now I know. You've got to be willing to do the things that you're afraid to do, because in the end, it could protect you more than it could harm you.
So put you first.
Put you first, and you've also got to think about, like in this case, she has the children, and I mean, it doesn't really affect you. I mean, a lot of times we put up with this behavior because we want to do it for the children, but we end up doing more harm than we're doing good.
Yeah, I agree. When I said put you, I mean like you versus him, because put you would incorporate the family. Because I think a lot of times we mentioned, you had mentioned the great point about not messing with his career. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, honestly, who cares? I wonder though, before we exit, why does it sound so easy now looking backwards? What was really so hard? I mean, I know we may have touched on it, but I mean, why is this obvious now? Like, why was it so hard really for her to do those things in the moment? Was there, I still feel, was there a connection she was trying to preserve? Was there a fear, like the Pope? I mean,
a fear. There's a fear. But I can tell you, if I saw her, or most therapists, if they saw her 8 years ago, they would have warned her to not have any contact with him, to, especially with the threats. I mean, a lot of times clients will get their phone out and they read me a couple text messages, and I'll be like, okay, that's concerning. Okay. And they go, oh, and they're reading it like they're reading, an article in the paper. And I'm like, okay, that's not something that should be tolerated. That's something that you need to, do something about.
Side question real quick.
Okay.
So when you leave a relationship abruptly because you kind of set your value and then the threats and you kind of know, I'm not going to stay here for this, right? Is there a chance that, let's say in our effort to kind of figure out who Spencer is a little bit, because we really don't know a lot about him outside of the good stuff he does, would you now seek the direct opposite?
What do you mean, in a new partner?
Yeah, like in the new partner. So like McKee is over controlling, threatened to kill me, whatever, all this other stuff. So now, because she married pretty quick after.
Yeah. So either they get the complete opposite. So they got a nice guy or something like that, or they continue the pattern. They find another jerk.
So right and right. So listen. So I agree. So listen. I'm not saying she married 3 years later. She left him 7 months into the relationship. So that's 2000 into the marriage. That's 2015, 7 months. So technically she was separated from him for about 4 years and 5 months. But about midway through that, she meets Spencer. And then she marries Spencer around 2020. So sometimes you see people that are in relationships that are this bad and just don't trust men at all. This is horrible. And it takes them a while, because it seems like she went through something. It takes them a while to kind of build that trust again and then try to find happiness, not generalizing it out that all men are this evil, as Michael McKee was. Or sometimes you just get the complete opposite.
Yep. Which it sounds like what she got. But what Spencer didn't realize is she came out of a very abusive relationship, and that this guy was not going away. So that's something that should have been noticed and dealt with before all this happened. I mean, I know that, like, looking back, it seems crystal clear, but with something like this, the handwriting was on the wall. There was a lot of warning signs. Not that she was a bad person, but there were a lot of, let's say, risk factors.
Right. So I say this all to say, and guys, just out of curiosity, just how my mind works. Earlier in the show, we talked about how if that was me at that game, I wouldn't have tolerated. And guys, it's not about a man's right over a woman. It has nothing to do with that. Just we're at a game. Yeah, it's a partnership. We're at a game. You never know the audience here. We have a good audience, but you never know someone coming in. I don't say tolerate at a level. I mean, just we're at a game, like you said, we're having fun. This guy fucking calls up, and then you leave to go talk to that guy. That would be very upsetting to me. But I wonder if there's a chance that on the opposite of control is submissive. Could Spencer have allowed it because Monique would be able to control that on him? This is not your place. Let me go handle this. And you stay in the end, because that's a lot for someone. I paid all this money and you're going to leave mid-game or traveled all this way. You're going to leave mid-game to go talk to him or go deal with him. I get you're upset, but come on.
Right. Or that he was so overly supportive that he should have put the foot down.
It's funny how you see it that way too.
I have said that many times in session. I'll say, do you ever put the foot down? Is there anything like she could have done that you would have said, no, I'm not going to tolerate this? I
said submissive. You said supportive. Obviously, there's a parallel there, right? So have you seen people disguise supportive when they're really being too submissive?
Yep.
Because I think that maybe there is something here with the fact that, she's just upset. He didn't follow her. He, didn't tell her, hey, what are you doing? Come back here. It's just, she's got her upset. So you're not going to try to, you're not going to follow, you're just going to let her go. I think that maybe she did say something like, hey, when I'm dealing with him, this has nothing to do with you, but you got to let me do it.
Yeah.
And he just puts his hands up. Baby.
But somebody that's healthy would not tolerate that. Like,
what?
Like, I can't even imagine. Like if I was with my husband, I can't imagine who would call him where he would have to leave. He was so upset, unless there was like a death or something like that. I mean, you would understand, but you know, somebody else makes you upset and you have to leave a game that you traveled and
especially
spent
an
money.
ex.
Exactly, an ex.
But yet we allow it.
Yeah.
I think there's routine in there.
I think so too, and I think, you know, there was no a lot of Monique and Spencer. There were a lot of boundaries and a lot of, you know, they needed to put the foot down.
Right.
With Brian and with each other, and it was not clearly defined with, you know, with a healthy foundation.
Yeah, guys, by the way, we're only going with a glimpse of what they tell us. I mean, there could be a lot of stuff here in the middle, but that's all we have. But I thought this was a great discussion. I mean, there's so many angles here that we covered. You know, it's just out there to, you know, show you human behavior is complicated to begin with. But we've been spending all this time talking about Michael, but Michael's could be reacting. You know, so what is he reacting to? What's on the other side of that coin? And we've never really explored that.
Yeah. Yep. Which is why I'm going to promote my book toward the end. I mean,
here we go. Wait, hold on.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. Elephants don't marry giraffes. So my email is denise.schoenwald@gmail.com. I would love the viewers to email me. Let me know. I'll mail you a book. This is a book that must be read to understand relationships, relationship dynamics, what makes a dysfunctional relationship. This is really important. It's a short book. See, very short, has a lot of information. I think it's for everybody to read.
Does the elephant, I mean, you know, short, tall and slender, short, and do they signify? I mean, they're complete opposites.
Well, exactly. And it talks about how relationships develop and why a lot of dysfunctional relationships work, not well, but they work. So there's a lot of different scenarios in there, a lot of different stories about situations that I've seen and what I would say as a therapist that they need to look out for and recommendations. But it's not just because I wrote it, but it's a really good book. So I want everybody I want to hear from lots and lots of people.
Yes, guys, please do show support as always. I mean, these discussions are well thought out, but they're meant to really not have answers, to be honest, but just ask the right questions. That's all.
And preventative. And so that's why I wrote the book, so people can understand relationships and warning signs and what to look out for.
Yeah. You know, again, for people that are watching it, there's no judgment here, just questions that are based on curiosity and as you said, the hopes of prevention. So Monique could have a good legacy.
Yes.
You know, there's another Michael McKee out there.
There are a dozen, I promise you.
I'll guarantee you there's Monique's as well, too.
Yes, many.
As always, guys, the show's here. If you like the content, please get the book, of course. Let's support that. And also I have Buy Me a Cup of Coffee, link to that in the description as well, top of the YouTube channel. And as always, guys, stay safe.